Hello, my name is Mark Beeman, Northern Arizona University. The name of my presentation is Uncovering Caste Representation in Film Through the Lens of Sociological Theory. The concept of caste has been central to understanding race relations in the U.S. Historically, the relative importance of caste was outlined by Pierre Vanderburg in describing paternalistic race relations, characteristic of plantation slavery, period, and competitive race relations characteristic of the Jim Crow era. Caste itself is a system with little to no mobility into which one is born. One's status is ascribed. The classic stereotypes for paternalistic race relations in the U.S. are that the dominant group has a benevolent ruler, the paternalistic father figure, and fun-loving, impulsive, childlike, inferior, lower caste members with adult women commonly stereotyped by the Mammy figure. In paternalistic race relations, sexual relations between the upper caste males and lower caste women were condoned, but in the case of the United States were often hidden. Sexual relations between lower caste men and upper caste women were condemned. Competitive race relations emerged after the Civil War and the abolition of slavery in the U.S. As industrialization emerged, both caste and class relations shaped the stratification system, particularly evident through the Jim Crow era. Here, African Americans freed from slavery were viewed as a competitive threat to the privileges previously reserved for whites only. Segregation was strictly enforced by law in the South and by practices such as housing policies or informal norms in the North. Black stereotypes such as criminals, the black male rapist, and Jezebels were represented as threats to the white community, while the Mammy figure remained as a model for good behavior. Racial intermarriage was rare in the U.S., strictly forbidden in the southern states, enforced by anti-miscegenation laws. Hence, the U.S. was characterized in these two periods by its racial caste system. Caste, a system one is born into with little chance for mobility, characterized by ascribed status. Caste hierarchy and endogamy is less obvious today in the United States. The modern period, a more fluid competitive system, is no longer marked by open discriminatory law, but institutional policies and social norms. Here, there is presumably no caste discrimination by law. Indeed, the term caste is seldom used by the general public, but its influence is still noted by scholars. This paper revisits Hollywood's classic attempts to address African American and white interracial marriage as a social issue through two groundbreaking films, D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation and Stanley Kramer's Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Birth of a Nation has been recognized as the first blockbuster film and has been praised for its cinematic innovation. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, winning 2, including awarding for Best Screenplay. Both films have appeared on the American Film Institute's list of 100 greatest films of all time. Griffith's film Birth of a Nation set the stage for recurring racial stereotypes in Hollywood filmmaking that continue in some form to the present day. It unequivocally promoted caste-centered anti-miscegenation, anti-black racism, and white supremacy. And for the next half a century, this anti-miscegenation norm went unchallenged in mainstream cinema. Kramer's Guess Who's Coming to Dinner challenged this historic norm, indicating that love, not race, is the important criterion for marriage. These films depict different periods spanning the transition from paternalistic race relations to competitive race relations. Both illuminate a central focus of the U.S. caste system, endogamy, prohibiting interracial marriage. Based on Dixon's novel The Klansman, a historic romance of the Ku Klux Klan, Griffin presents a romanticized and racist version of happy slaves in the pre-Civil War era and dangerous free African Americans who threaten good white residents of the South during Reconstruction. Here we see an image of the black beast threatening white purity from his film. Silas Lynch, a biracial mulatto protege of an egalitarian white political leader from the North, attempts to force marriage on his mentor's daughter. Hence, the Black Beast character, rape threat to innocent white females, stands as a warning to Northern whites about the dangers of African American emancipation. Here's an image of Mammy in her role. Mammy as a loyal African American in the South, according to the film. Mammies were happy to be subservient to their white masters even after they were freed from slavery. In this image, the Mammy character is scolding a free American from the North she views as a threat to her white family. Mammy would eventually physically fight African American males that she viewed as threatening to the white family. Her family were former plantations owners in the Confederate South who were defeated by the Union Army during the Civil War. Okay. Here we see the Ku Klux Klan in the film as white savior. The little colonel from his defeated Confederate army returns home. He finds a society with African Americans serving as politicians and soldiers. To fight back against this formed racial egalitarianism, the little colonel forms and leads a secret society, the Ku Klux Klan. The little colonel saves innocent Elsie from the Black Beast in the film, and he reestablishes white supremacy in the South. Elsie's former egalitarian father learns a lesson that free African Americans are a threat to white Christian civilization. Hence, the film is educating Northern audiences on the dangers of racial miscegenation and the threat to traditional caste privileges. In real life, D.W. Griffith's own father was a colonel in the Confederate Army. And here the Klan is depicted as meting out racial justice by lynching an African American in the film. Birth of a Nation becomes a classic illustration of a newer competitive form of race relations, threatening the traditional paternalistic race relations in the U.S. South. Based on the work of Vandenberg, paternalistic race relations developed in agrarian societies with plantation agriculture. Here, a racial caste system defining the racial roles of owners and forced labor arose, with the dominant group stereotyping the subordinate caste as childlike, lovable, impulsive, lazy, and inferior. White males viewed themselves as benevolent rulers. Miscegenation between lower caste males and upper caste women was condemned, while upper caste men had sexual access to lower caste women during the period. This way of life was threatened after the Civil War. Competitive race relations, as described by Vandenberg, emerged in industrializing economies with caste and class both influencing stratification. The dominant group now viewed the newly freed labor lower caste group as potential competition and stereotyped them as uppity, dangerous, insolent, dirty, oversexed, and inferior. In this system, miscegenation was rare and generally condemned by the dominant group. Consistent with paternalistic and competitive race relations theory, Birth of a Nation concludes with white men reestablishing their supremacy in the South and enforcing a ban on interracial marriage. A half century after Birth of a Nation, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, 1967, becomes the first popular mainstream film to readdress interracial marriage between an African American male and white female. The film centers on the Draytons, a white family. The father, Matt, is a liberal newspaper editor, and the mother, Christina, runs an art gallery. The Draytons are somewhat shocked when their daughter, Joanna, brings home an African American physician, Dr. John Prentice, and announces that they are going to get married. Unbeknownst to Joanna, John deferentially tells Matt and Christina that if they don't approve of the marriage, there will be no marriage. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner challenged the prevailing competitive race relations stereotype by offering a post-civil rights image of John. John's a widower, an accomplished World Health Organization physician, a university professor, and a medical volunteer for humanitarian projects in Africa. John is a self-made, successful person who comes from humble beginnings. His virtue is reinforced by his refusal to have sex with Joanna until they're married. His saint-like character leaves only one possible objection to the marriage: his race. Here's the image of John with Joanna. John's role is a dramatic counter to the stereotypical Black Beast character of Birth of a Nation. Joanna is young and virtuous. She and the younger generation characters in the film are presented as colorblind. Joanna has no idea her father was initially opposed to the marriage. John, who bridges the generation gap of the other characters in the film, embraces the colorblind theme as well. He lectures his own race-conscious father. You see yourself as a black man, I see myself as a man. The film portrays the father's objections to the marriage as concern for their children, as distinct from opposition to the marriage from overt forms of racism. Here the character Hillary is the classic racist in the film. Hillary is employed by Christina. Hillary plays the classic racist, appalled that Joanna will be marrying an African-American man. As theorized by Bloomer, Hillary's prejudice is based on perceived higher status as a member of the dominant racial group. John represents a threat, an intrinsically different, an alien person encroaching on her proprietary privileges. Unlike Birth of a Nation, where the racist becomes the hero, the racist Hillary is fired from her job and actually becomes an outcast. The audience is allowed to interpret the family members' opposition to the interracial marriage is somehow not racist because their motives are relatively benign compared to the motives of the obviously racist Hillary. Okay? Matt is seen as the benevolent father figure. The message of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is a direct challenge to the racist anti-miscegenation theme of Birth of a Nation. The content is meant to challenge the old stereotypes of racism typified by Hillary and embrace racial equality. Here, competitive race relations stereotyping is being challenged. But the film's resolution falls short of egalitarianism it hopes to portray. Matt literally stands as the authority figure who gives his final decision, while all the others are expected to sit and listen. Joanna attempts to speak during Matt's deliberation, where Matt tells her, "Joey, this may be the last chance I ever have to tell you to do anything. Sit down and shut up." Matt's wife, Christina, listens quietly as well, as Matt says Christina's views on the marriage have been irrational and emotional. When Matt decides the couple may get married, he tells Dr. Prentice not to worry about his own father's objections to the marriage. Mr. Prentice's own father must sit in silence and dismay, even though he does not approve. In effect, those listening to Matt are treated as children. The content of the dialogue embraces racial equality in marriage, but the format is a replay of paternalistic race relations with the benevolent authority in charge. The maid character, Tilly, particularly drives home this point. Although in a modern setting, Tilly is yet another Hollywood Mammy character projecting stereotypical traits depicted as far back as Birth of a Nation. Here we see Millie defending her white family from John, the physician. Tilly, in the classic Mammy tradition, defiantly confronts Dr. Prentice, accusing him of being up to no good, even calling him the N-word. Tilly's attacks on Dr. Prentice include her defending her white family, particularly attempting to protect Joanna from Dr. Prentice. Tilly emphatically proclaims that she raised Joanna from a baby. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner appears to unwittingly repeat patterns embraced in Birth of a Nation. While the content is clearly promoting racial equality, its form relies on a white paternalistic solution. Both films are viewed from a white lens, highlighting the importance of including diverse perspectives in representing social reality. Both films, indicative of dominant group racial beliefs of their time, highlight the central significance of caste relations in resolving crises. Birth of a Nation unapologetically hopes to steer the public to the caste relations of a previous era. It is adamant in condemning interracial marriage and desires a full return to enforcing endogamy. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner struggles with the question of interracial marriage, and while it ultimately tries to set a course to challenge endogamy in the U.S., it unwittingly reinforces caste privileges in the decision-making process by denying any authority to the African-American characters, resurrecting the Mammy character, and preserving decision-making for the white male father figure. These films then provide a historic window for students to view the importance of caste relations in the United States. Thank you.